Hello, and welcome to this drawing journey through the Ruhi books. The Ruhi books are a set of study circle materials that we in the Baha'i community study together. There are no ministers or priests in the Baha'i communities, and therefore there is no teacher or professor in these study circles. We all follow along and read and study them together, and there is a tutor at the beginning who helps guide everything and keep everything flowing. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil to do this, and then just follow it. I was a co-tutor in Ruhi Book 1, and towards the end of that book we were thinking that it would be a good idea to get a sense for all the participants of the flow, the journey through all of the first cycle of 7 books, and what was that like and how they are interconnected. And therefore, we did this drawing together. Whenever and wherever you see a dark orange line, copy it on your paper and help you to keep everything in place in relationship with each other. It's useful to think about your page as if it were divided into a grid. This will help you to know where and in what grid and how long and in what direction to draw out that line. This is the beginning of our journey, the first stirrings of a program for the transformation of our neighborhoods, for the sustained expansion and consolidation of the faith can already be felt. The books are intended to be used as the main sequence of courses in a systematic effort to enhance capacity for service. Notice that the line goes down and is still in that bottom left-hand part of the grid. Don't worry if you do not think you draw well enough. Look at mine. I'm an artist. I was a high school art teacher. I shake. My lines are shaky. Yet your drawing will be okay, and it will still convey the idea. So that sort of looks like a little bit of a foot now, or a shoe. Of particular significance is its organizing principle, developing capacity to serve the cause and humanity in a process likened to walking a path of service. This conception shapes both the content and structure of these Ruhi books and this institute process. Notice the line goes towards the middle, but it's still in that bottom left-hand grid. We begin with Ruhi Book 1, Reflections on the Life of the Spirit. And the first leg to help us stand up and begin to take this walk is the study of the Holy Writings. As part of the study of the Holy Writings, and obviously we cannot study all of them, we study passages that give us a flavor and the desire to study and read more. We begin to practice and strive to memorize some of the books so that they become a part of us and a part of our thinking. The line's gone up into that top left-hand grid, just a little bit. And there's a little squiggle there. Next, in Unit 2 of that first Ruhi Book 1, we begin to understand the elements of prayer. Yes, the lines overlap, and in some ways it looks a little bit like just a squiggle. The wiggly lines at the top look a little bit like a rose, and this line is beginning to look a little bit like a leaf. Notice we've dipped down a little bit into that bottom left-hand grid again and come up to the middle line, the center line. We learn how prayer is food for our soul and helps our soul to grow and bloom. We recognize and develop a skill of being of service by sharing a prayer with relatives, friends, and associates. We begin to feel we are able to give a helping hand to strengthening of the faith in our neighborhood. We also begin to take initial steps to shouldering the responsibility to support and begin a devotional gathering. In Unit 3, we begin to discuss and understand this soul that is blooming within. We come to recognize that in this world it is growing spiritual mouth to intone the words of God, spiritual nose to inhale the divine fragrances. We recognize our souls developing spiritual ears to hear the divine summons. We also come to recognize that our soul is not an entity within us, rather a reflection of our soul in the mirror of our heart. Our soul is mysteriously attached to our body. It does not reside within our body. Our soul is a single, eternal entity which becomes more radiant as we polish our spiritual qualities in this world. So, for all that rose and leaf in that top right-hand part of the grid, then you might want to put those radiant lines around it because it's sort of like a sun light that is shining and reflecting in that mirror. Book 1, Reflections on the Life of the Spirit. As we move on into Book 2, Arising to Serve, we begin to know ourselves better and begin to think about having meaningful conversations with those we are in contact with. Thus, we begin to understand the many kinds of meaningful conversations we can engage in that will be of use in building our neighborhood. We begin to shoulder that aspect of sharing what we know with others. One of the conversations we are bound to have is that we are all equal, men and women. Both are divine souls. So draw a breath so that in our spiritual journey we can remember that both sexes are involved in giving a hand to the work of meaningful conversations. Both are equal in the sight of God. Like our hand, those conversations tend to be about the 5 fingers of our community's hand of service, the 5 activities of meaningful conversations, home visits, devotional gatherings, children's classes, junior youth groups, and study circles. With these 2 aspects of our being and doing developing, we begin to be able to walk this path of service easier and stronger. And notice the line has now crossed over into the bottom right-hand part of the group. We have completed Book 2, Arising to Serve. The very notion of a path is itself indicative of the nature and purpose of the courses. For a path invites participation, it beckons to new horizons, demands effort and movement, it accommodates different paces and strides, it is structured and defined, the path can be experienced and known, not only by 1 or 2, but by scores upon scores. It belongs to the community. To walk a path is a concept equally expressive. It requires of the individual volition and choice, calls for a set of skills and abilities, but also elicits certain qualities and attitudes. It necessitates a logical progression, but admits, when needed, related lines of exploration. It may seem easy at the outset, but becomes more challenging further along. Crucially, one walks the path in the company of others. We can stand up and begin to think about what kinds of neighborhood service are for us as we begin to explore Book 3, Teaching Children's Classes, Grade 1. In Teaching Children's Classes, Grade 1, we come to understand that although we may not all wish to walk this aspect of the path of service, the elements studied are of great use to us in all aspects of our service, in all activities. For teaching a children's class, like every activity, has 2 legs of service upon which we walk that path. The service of the actual class or activity, and the service of visiting of the homes of the parents of children's classes, to share with them what is going on with their children so they, the parents and families, feel they are included and respected. In other activities, those visits are to develop lasting friendships with the participants and their families. Book 3, Teaching Children's Classes Grade 1, does involve the study of quotes, stories, songs, and games, all of which are useful for us to know and to incorporate into our activities, devotionals, meaningful conversations, study circles, and junior youth activities. It is not that we need to use those quotes, stories, songs, and games all in the same way as in a children's class. They become a resource, just as the study of how to run and organize a children's class becomes a resource. We can apply to running a devotional, having meaningful conversations, study circles, and junior youth activities. Each activity requires the same kind of organizational skills as it grows and develops. There are currently 2 points along the sequence at which an individual may choose to follow a specialized path of service. The first appears at Book 3. From among the friends who have completed it and begin to offer a relatively simple task for children in the first grade of a program for their spiritual education, a percentage will want to dedicate themselves to this field of service, pursuing in time a series of progressively more complex branch courses for teachings grade 2 to 6. This does not mean that they will abandon study of the main sequence. Indeed, courses that make up a specialized path of service anticipate that participants are continuing to progress, each at a pace suitable to his or her situation, along the path traced out by the main sequence. With the completion of Book 3, Teaching Children's Classes Grade 1, we come to Book 4, Twin Manifestations, which may seem at first a side path into the history of the faith. The book, The Twin Manifestations, is like the belt of the community which holds everything together and holds everything up. The Twin Manifestations are, of course, the Bab, Forerunner, and Baha'u'llah. In this book, we study about the greatness of this day, the life of the Bab and the life of Baha'u'llah, all topics we can draw upon in our meaningful conversations and in our own visits. We begin to be able to share the stories of their lives and times with a few images of the various points along their interconnected lives. We come to recognize the potency of their lives and times, as well as appreciate the magnitude of the spiritual forces released by their lives and words, which equally apply to this day we are living in. Book 4, The Twin Manifestations. Book 5, Releasing the Powers of Junior Youth, is one of the 5 fingers of the hand of service of the community. With Book 5, Releasing the Power of Junior Youth, we come to discover another possible shouldering of service that needs to occur if we are to improve our neighborhoods. We begin to both listen to the junior youth and recognize that they are no longer children. We also begin to understand the special role youth, those 15 to 30, who can arise to serve as animators of these junior youth empowerment programs. Not that older individuals cannot perform this service as well. The program helps the junior youth to clarify a number of concepts at work at this stage of their lives. Such concepts as the interplay between service, education, and preparation for the future. To aid in this exploration, there are a number of books especially designed for the program, such as Breezes of Confirmation, Glimmerings of Hope, and to cover the 3 years of the program, Thinking About Numbers, Walking the Straight Path, Learning About Excellence, Observation and Insight, The Human Temple, Drawing on the Power of the Word. And in its own work with young people, the Ruhi Institute includes items in a second category which address Baha'i-related subjects. Among these subjects are those which adolescents most often struggle, such as free will and predestination, and the complex relationship between will and knowledge. Currently, the following titles are in this category: Spirit of Faith, The Power of the Holy Spirit. We complete Book 5, Releasing the Powers of Junior Youth, and begin to practice helping both the junior youth and ourselves face our future. Even if we do not choose to become an animator of a junior youth group, the study of the material in the books the junior youth themselves cover is of use in building the repertoire of possible, meaningful conversations we can engage in. The second point, along which the sequence at which an individual may choose to follow a specialized path of service, is Book 5, which seeks to raise up animators of junior youth groups and constitutes another series of courses branching out. So we begin Book 6, Teaching the Cause. Although we use the word teaching, true teaching is spiritual, meaningful conversation and consultation. So we discuss the spiritual nature of teaching, conversations, and consultation, the qualities and attitudes of the teacher when engaged in conversations and consultation, and the act of teaching, the act of having meaningful conversations and consultations. As we learn to shoulder this aspect of reaching out and having meaningful conversations, doing home visits, we come to complete Book 6, Teaching the Cause. This cycle of books is coming to an end as we begin Book 7, Walking Together on a Path of Service. We begin to practice how to be a tutor ourselves, how to open our hearts to this line of service. To accomplish this, we reflect upon the spiritual path we are all on, become a tutor as we are all in the process of becoming better, and can tutor at whatever level we are comfortable. And we learn about the use of the arts in the process. Or just as in the children's classes, the use of the arts, drawing, painting, singing, poetry, storytelling, singing, dancing, movement, games, drama, cooking, etc. all are aspects of having meaningful conversations that give us a hand in beginning and being a loving, united group. Book 7, Walking Together on a Path of Service. In this connection, we are particularly happy to note the degree of effort being exerted in every country to lend an added measure of vitality to the Institute process. So critical if increasing numbers are to participate actively in the work required to bring into reality a new world order. The capabilities of friends serving as tutors of study circles, animators of junior youth groups, teachers of spiritualities, and the promotion of an environment conducive at once to universal participation and mutual support and assistance. Nowhere is the centrality of these to the fulfillment of the community's God-given mission lost on the fringe. The first cycle of books, 1 to 7, are just that, the first cycle. We now move on to the higher level books, working together, accompanying each other. The sequence is conceived in terms of 3 cycles, each one concerned with the spiritual and moral empowerment of individuals from a particular perspective. Books 1 to 7 are centered on the practice of the freedom of the individual enjoys to undertake acts of service within the framework of the teachings and of the Baha'i faith and the guidance provided by its institutions. Book 8, begins a cycle of courses dedicated to the individual and the community, which will be followed by the third cycle, focusing on the individual and society. Somewhere on your drawing, you may want to write or print the quote, "In the garden of thy heart, plant naught but the rose of love." Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following to this end. And contact your local Baha'i group, assembly or group or community if you wish to take part in such a study course and such activities as teaching a children's class, running a junior youth group. Much love, respect.